Returning home from work, I stopped by the post office and, as usual, my mailbox was full of junk mail and bills. I flipped through them and tossed most of it into the trash can beside the table. Between a visa statement and a bill from Kiko was an envelope addressed in the smooth handwriting I knew all too well. I had been receiving one letter a month for more than a year. She had figured out that my mail was being forwarded from my old address, so she wrote and sent letters there to be forwarded to me. I met Pat at a wedding reception. A guy I worked with was getting married, and the whole office was invited to the wedding. After the wedding, everyone headed to the reception. I had been there for about an hour when this tall, blonde walked in. She drew everyone's attention and certainly mine. But she wasn't alone, so I pushed her out of my mind. Well, not completely out of my mind. The hall was small, so she was almost always within sight. Maybe another hour passed, and I noticed that she seemed to be getting more and more upset with her companion. Right after the bride and groom cut the cake, I stood up to go to the bathroom. On the way, I had to pass the table where the blonde was sitting. Just as I reached the table, I heard her say, "Bastard." No matter how quietly she said it, it sounded like it was addressed to me. I turned to her and asked, "Excuse me?" She blushed and said, "It's not you, but this worthless piece of trash, my date. All he does is drink. I've been trying to get him onto the dance floor since we arrived, but all he's done is drink, and now this lump has abandoned me." Although she added, "Maybe I deserve it. That's what I get for going on a blind date." Relieved to know she didn't think I was the bastard, I went to the bathroom and then returned to the table I was sharing with a few colleagues. When the orchestra played again, I glanced at her and saw her watching the dancers, tapping her feet. On a whim, I stood up, walked over to her, and asked her to dance. She said yes, and that was the beginning of a whirlwind romance that led to our marriage 3 months later. Patricia and was a computer genius and worked as a system administrator at a major corporation. She tried to explain to me what she did, but I'm computer illiterate, so it went in one ear and out the other. I know how to turn on my computer and get on the internet, but that's the extent of my computer savvy. I make a living as a heavy equipment mechanic, and I'm pretty good at it. So, soon the two of us saved enough to make a down payment on a house. We had a great marriage, at least that's what I thought. I was madly in love with her, and she certainly felt the same way about me. But in the 6th year of our marriage, something changed. When it started, I couldn't say for certain, and it might have been going on for quite some time before I noticed. Patty always went out with the girls from work one night a week and usually got home by 9 o'clock. I didn't notice when that time stretched to 9:30, then 10 o'clock, and then 10:30. It was only later that I recalled those nights Patty started working late a couple of times a week, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She explained it as an unexpectedly large contract with tight deadlines. They weren't prepared for such a big order, and until management made some decisions about the direction to take, everyone was asked to work overtime to meet the contract decisions. I asked what kind of decisions they wanted to make sure the contract would be long-term before investing in more equipment and hiring more people, and how long will this go on? "Maybe a couple of months," she said. "I'm not exactly sure." A couple of months stretched into 8 before I started complaining about it. She always calmly replied, "It shouldn't be much longer, baby. I know you don't like it, and I don't either. I don't enjoy hauling boxes on the platform, but I promise to help." Then one Wednesday evening, she called me and said she'd have to work late and was supposed to work tonight, but she got into an accident and is in the hospital. So, I'll have to cover for her the next morning. At breakfast, I asked, "How's Ann doing?" Patty looked at me in confusion, then said, "Oh, right, not great. They've got her in traction. Both legs and one hip are broken, and she's going to be off work for a while." The poor girl had some rotten luck. She went on vacation with her boyfriend, and before it was over, he told her he'd found someone else. On the way home, the airline lost her luggage, and now this accident. "So now you'll be working overtime on Wednesdays too," she added. "Yeah, and maybe 1 or 2 Fridays as well." That's when I started thinking about a few things. Up until that point, her overtime was just irritating, and that's all I thought it was. A bunch of incompetent managers who couldn't pull their heads out of their asses and fix the problem. But it all started with the confusion on her face when I asked about Ann. It was like she had lied, forgotten about it, and then had to scramble to cover it up. And if that's the case, Could she be lying about having to work late? That's when I remembered the Wednesday nights spent with the girls from work and how they started ending later and later. I began to wonder, what is a computer technician doing moving boxes on a loading dock? Everything came together for me that Sunday. I was doing routine maintenance on Patty's car. I changed the oil, added windshield washer fluid, and then decided to rotate the tires. When I opened the trunk to get the spare, I found 2 suitcases. Curious, I opened one and discovered it was full of clothes. The other was full of lingerie, high heels, and similar items, heels and lingerie I had never seen before. I didn't know who Patty was wearing them for, but it certainly wasn't for me. So much for Patty working overtime. There could only be one reason for multiple outfit changes and all that sexy stuff in her trunk, and it definitely wasn't work-rated. Sometimes, I'm slow to catch on, but I try not to be a fool. I analyze problems, turn them over in my head, look at them from all angles, and consider all the possibilities before making a decision. Since it was the holiday season and things were pretty hectic, I postponed following up on Patty until the end of the year. However, I didn't have to wait long. Patty's company Christmas party was scheduled for a Wednesday, and she was eagerly looking forward to it. At the last minute, I got a job that prevented me from going with her. She was upset. No, that's not right. She was furious and really took it out on me. And I wasn't any better. Shouting back at her, "Now you know how I feel when you work overtime." I said I'd try to finish in time to at least make an appearance, but that didn't seem to calm her down at all. On the day of the party, I worked as hard as I could to try to make it. The party started at 7 o'clock, and after busting my butt, I was able to finish work, get home, shower, change, and arrive by 9 o'clock. When I walked in, I saw Patty passionately hugging and French kissing some guy while people were stomping their feet, banging their fists on the tables, and shouting, "Get a room, you two, and take your romance to a motel." I turned around and left, and no one even noticed. On the way home, I tried to make sense of the reasons that might have driven her to seek out another man, but I couldn't figure it out. For God's sake, I treated her like a queen. I did everything I could for her. I helped around the house. I cooked at least 3 times a week and cleaned up after myself in the evenings, waiting for her to come home. I would do a load of laundry. I kept my man cave and the downstairs bathroom next to it tidy. All of this on top of taking care of the house, the yard, and both cars. I never forgot a birthday or an anniversary. I remembered the day we met, and every year on that day, I gave her a card. Same with the anniversary of the day I proposed. I never even looked at other women. I did everything I could to be the best husband she could ever hope for. So what went wrong? The only thing I could think of was the 20 pounds I'd gained over the last 5 years. Was that the reason? Was I no longer physically attractive to her? But in the end, it didn't matter. What I saw meant one thing. We had blown our marriage. I loved her deeply, but not enough to make me want to share her, and not enough to make me fight for her. So, what if I won her back from this guy? Could I win her back from the next one, and the one after that? No. As painful as it was to admit, Patty and I were over. But I made one decision. The 20 pounds had to go. I was going to be in shape when I started dating again. I also decided not to get a divorce. I would never marry again, and Patty and I got along fine as long as she was busy with her lover. So, I would maintain the status quo and save myself the hassle and expense of a divorce. All I had to do was pretend I didn't know about her lover. That evening, when she came home, she was in a great mood and wanted to make love. It would have been unnatural for me to refuse her, and besides, I was curious to see if I could tell if I was getting the leftovers in bed. Surprisingly, she felt the same as she had on any of the hundreds of other nights we had sex. But damn, all of it just screamed to me that I'd been the second man for far too long. I wondered if she was trying to love me to death out of guilt, or if she got a thrill from giving me the leftovers after her lover. On Monday, I went to the gym, sat down with a personal trainer, and he created a program for me. I started going to the gym on my way to work on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and after a month, I began running on the weekends, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, with only Sundays off. My relationship with Patty remained unchanged. She still acted as if I was her one and only, and I never let on that I knew anything more. She was still working late at least 2 nights a week, and I stopped complaining about it. In 2 months, I had lost 18 pounds, toned up a bit, and was feeling pretty good. Mara and Sally, two women I worked with in the office, both commented on the change, and Sally asked me what had caused it. I told her I was trying to get in shape to be more attractive to women. "Oh, and what does Patty think about that?" she asked. "We have an understanding." "Oh, an open marriage." "Yes, well, stud. I'm ready if you are," she said, which caught me off guard. I had always flirted with Sally and Mara, and they flirted back, but I never expected it to be anything more than playful banter. However, from the tone of Sally's voice, she was serious. What the hell? I said to myself, go for it. "Jerry, knowing Patty would be working on Thursday, I asked, are you free Thursday?" "I guess I am now," she replied. "What do you have in mind?" "It's up to you." "All right, I'll think of something. When you pick me up, casual dress?" "I'll be there at 6:30, she said. "Okay," I responded. Mara, who had been standing nearby and listening, suddenly jumped up and said, "I've got seniority here." But Sally laughed and replied, "You snoozed, you lost. Now wait your turn." I showed up at Sally's at 6:30, and she answered the door in a robe. "Am I too early?" I asked. "No, I'm already dressed for our date," she said as she opened the robe. She was naked except for stockings, high heels, and a garter belt. "I think we'll start with dessert, then have dinner, and after that, we decide what to do," she suggested. She led me to the bedroom, knelt in front of me, and unzipped my pants. I'll spare the details of what happened next, but I'd never had such pleasure before. I lifted her and pushed her back onto the bed, returning the favor. We never did have dinner that night, and I was a very satisfied man. Sally walked me to the door, gave me a passionate kiss, and asked when we could meet again. "I'm available on Tuesdays and Thursdays." "I'm ready for both Tuesday and Thursday." On my way home, I stopped by work, took a shower in the locker room, changed into my work clothes, and then headed to Bill's bar for a beer, so I wouldn't be out of breath when I got home. After that, I went home. When I got there, Patty was still awake. "Where have you been?" Knowing you wouldn't be home, I decided to stop by and play pool with the guys after work. "I hope you didn't drink too much because I want you." It wasn't easy to fulfill her request, but I managed it. It took me a moment to shake off the buzz. I'd have to keep an eye on that in the future. I had completely forgotten that Patty always came home fired up after working late, and I needed to make sure I had some energy left for her for the next 6 weeks. Sally and I had hot, intense sex, and then, one evening, she said to me, "Now it's Mara's turn." "Jerry, what's going on? This is our last time. I want Mara to take my place. Don't I get a say in this?" "Yes and no," I replied. "You get a say in whether you want Mara, but this is definitely our last time together. You're a married man, Jerry, and I can't afford to get too emotionally involved with you. There's no future for me here, so I'm letting you go. Be a good guy, we'll stay friends, and I won't have to quit my job." "Okay, do you think Marlo really wants to switch places?" "I know she's got a thing for you, sweetheart. All you need to do is ask, or you might not even need to. She knows we're done, and she might come to you herself." That's exactly what happened on Friday. Marla came up to me and said, "I heard your Tuesdays and Thursdays are free now. Mind if I take them?" My first night with Marlo was almost a repeat of my first night with Sally, in that we didn't leave her apartment at all. The noticeable difference between Mara and Sally was that Sally didn't like unconventional sex, while Mara did, and she made that clear right away. In fact, she wanted it more than usual. Who am I to argue with a woman? My affair with Mara lasted 5 weeks, and then she ended it for the same reason as Sally. "I've gotten too attached to you, Jerry, and that's not good with a married man." Both of them said that if I were single, we could live together. They were both fun girls and both amazing in bed, but divorcing to be with either of them? Not a chance. They both had affairs with a married man. Why would I want women like that? I already had one at home. Over the next 8 months, I dated and slept with 9 different women. None of the affairs lasted more than a month, most only 2 or 3 weeks. But I wasn't looking for anything long-term either. My situation at home didn't change. Patty still worked late a couple of nights a week, almost always on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so those were my meeting nights. I have no idea how much longer things would have continued the way they were if it hadn't been for a strange coincidence. It was a Wednesday, and I was at the gym. I had just finished my workout and was in the shower when the man who had been with Patty at the Christmas party walked in with two other guys and started changing into gym clothes. I turned off the water, dried myself with a towel, and listened to the conversation between the three men. It seemed like the guys had switched from evening to morning workouts. There was some work-related talk that made me believe they worked for the same company, though not necessarily in the same office. Then one of them said, "How's it going with that fox you were with at the Christmas party? Still sleeping with her? I keep telling you, I'm not even trying to get her into bed. We're just good friends." "Yeah, sure. I'd like to be friends with her too. Hell, I'd love to be friends with her. Forget about it. She's so attached to her husband, you think he was made of gold. Come on, Mike. I saw you two, hugging and kissing like a brother and sister. Good friends hug and kiss. Honestly, she's so fixated on her husband that no other man would have a chance. That's Mike. I saw you both at the Christmas party, and that kiss you two shared wasn't a brotherly kiss. True, but it didn't mean anything. Her husband promised he'd come, but he never showed up. She was furious and had a few drinks when she finally accepted that he wasn't coming. She grabbed me and said, "Damn it, this is a Christmas party, and someone is supposed to kiss me under the mistletoe. And if it's not going to be Jerry, it's going to be you." That was the only time I find that hard to believe. Do you want to know how obsessed she is with her husband? You know, all those shipping and overtime shifts everyone tries to avoid. She's been working every single minute of it to buy him a bass fishing boat for his birthday. Most of what we talk about is her asking me about engine sizes, fish finders, and all the other things she plans to outfit the boat with. I just hope the guy realizes what a precious gem he has in her. Let's hurry up. I've only got the court until 7. When they left, I sat down on the wooden bench in front of the lockers and stared at the wall. My God, what have I done? I completely misinterpreted the situation and then let my anger get the best of me. I did exactly what I mistakenly thought Patty had done. I cheated. I acted behind the back of the woman who loved me, deceiving her not just once but multiple times with many different women. The only saving grace was that I never threw it in Patty's face, so I'll cheat twice as much. Patty had no idea that I'd been unfaithful, and that I clearly wasn't going to do it anymore. I would do everything in my power to make things right with her, even though she would never know. But it didn't work. I just wasn't the kind of guy who could cheat and then go through life, pretending everything was fine. I could act that way as long as I thought Patty was cheating on me, but once I found out she was faithful, everything changed. I couldn't even bring myself to make love to her because the touch of a cheater would have tainted her. I had truly ruined my marriage and messed up my life. It was incredibly foolish. All I needed to do back then was simply approach her and say, "Here's what's happening, and here's why I think so," and we could have talked it through. After overhearing the conversation in the locker room, I had no doubt that there was a reasonable explanation for the suitcases in her trunk, but I never gave her a chance to explain. I was in deep trouble. I couldn't even look her in the face. I didn't have the courage to sit her down and tell her what I had done and why. I was a coward, and I did what cowards do. I ran away. I went to my boss and told him I had caught my wife cheating and was planning to move on. "I like the company and the work I do, and if you have a position available somewhere else, I'd like to transfer," I said. "If not, I'd probably have to hand in my resignation." He picked up the phone, made a call, and just like that, I was on my way to Colorado. I told him my wife would likely be looking for me to cause trouble, and I asked him to say that I left without warning and that he had no idea where I went. The next day, while Patty was at work, I loaded all my things into the pickup at the last minute. I wrote a simple note, "I'm so sorry," and left it on the kitchen table. It was certainly a terrible thing to do to her, but over time, she would cope. She deserved better than me. She'd be able to get a divorce as an abandoned wife and move on with her life. That was 14 months ago, and in those 14 months, not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about Patty and what we had, and how I stupidly destroyed it. Fortunately, I had plenty of work to keep my mind and hands busy for 10 to 12 hours a day, but the nights were killing me. Waking up alone in the morning was brutal. When I first started my new job, I decided to go to the bar after work and drown my sorrows. But that didn't last long. Going to work every morning with a hangover wasn't great, and the beer was undoing everything the gym and running had done for me. So, I got into my van, found a local gym, and started getting back in shape. After being there for 6 months, I noticed a few women who seemed to show interest in me, but I didn't make any moves. My head was still full of thoughts about Patty, and I didn't know if the day would ever come when I could think about another woman. I opened the statement from Kiko and saw that I had overpaid and received a credit, so I tore it up and tossed it in the trash. I didn't bother opening the Visa statement. I knew full well that I didn't have credit on that account and wouldn't be making a payment until my next paycheck, so I put it in my pocket. I picked up the letter from Patty and stared at it, imagining I could smell her scent, and then tossed it into the trash. Is that it? A voice came from behind me. You don't even open the letters, just throw them away. I turned around and saw Patty. Hello, Jerry, long time no see. I just stared at her. I couldn't even run because she was standing between me and the door. Cat got your tongue? Well, I'm not surprised. You were never much of a talker. I got 2 words when you left, and I still don't know what you were sorry for. I've been thinking about it all year. I'll never understand why you wasted an extra word. You could have just said goodbye. Come on, Jerry, say something. How did you find me? I'm not telling. If you run again, I might have to use the same method, and I'm not giving you another chance to cover your tracks. The point is, I'm here, and I'm not leaving until I know everything. Just not here. Let's go to my place. For heaven's sake, what made you think I was cheating on you? You had a lot of the classic signs of a cheating wife. All of a sudden, you were working late when you never used to. Increased sexual activity with me. Whether because you felt guilty or your lover got you fired up, by the time you had to come home, so your husband had to put out the fire. Or maybe you liked giving your husband the leftovers from your lover. The nights you stayed out for drinks with your colleagues stayed later and later. Then I found suitcases in your trunk, full of sexy clothes you never wore for me, and all of that on top of me showing up at the Christmas party and seeing you making out with some guy while all your colleagues were yelling for you to get a room and go to a motel. They wouldn't have said that unless they were sure you two were lovers. It all pointed to a cheating wife. You poor, foolish man. Why didn't you talk to me? The suitcases belonged to Anne. I told you the airline lost her luggage. They found it, but by then, she was in the hospital in traction and asked me to pick it up. The overtime was real. All you had to do was look at my receipts. You were right about the increased sex being due to guilt, but it was guilt for leaving you alone so often. I knew it bothered you, and I was trying to make it up to you. As for Christmas, it didn't mean anything. I had 2 drinks too many and was angry at you for not being there to give me a Christmas kiss under the mistletoe. So I grabbed Mike. Yes, it was excessive, but if you had stayed, you would have seen that we parted ways and went back to different tables, and he didn't even dance with me the whole evening. God, Jerry, I can't believe you just left me like that and didn't even try to explain. I didn't leave because of you, I left because of me, because of what I did in response. And what did you do? I took a deep breath and told her about Sally Mara and all the others, and how I managed to keep the marriage going. My cheating made me feel like I was on equal ground with her supposed infidelity. Then, when I found out you weren't cheating, my life just fell apart. I couldn't look you in the eye, knowing what I had done to you. I realized you deserved better than a cheating jerk, so I left. Her face went a little pale, and she said, "My God, what a mess." She kept looking at me, shaking her head, and then said, "Let me see if I've got this right. You thought I was cheating, so you cheated to make things even, right?" I said, "Yes," and she continued, "So while we were even, you thought we could continue living together, and everything would be fine, right?" I nodded. "Only when you found out I wasn't cheating, everything went to hell, is that it?" I said, "Yes." "So if you had never overheard that conversation at the gym, we'd still be living together. You'd still be playing around with your women while staying with me, maybe." She looked at me for another minute, then asked, "Did you love me?" "Yes, I did, and I still do. The only reason I stayed, even thinking you were cheating, was because I loved you so much I couldn't leave. You know I love you, right? My showing up here should prove that. I was devastated when you left, and I didn't know what caused it. I need you in my life, Jerry. I need you to come home with me, or I'll move here to be with you, but one way or another, I want to be with you, Jerry. Please. I can't, Patty. After all of this, I just can't. Being with you is a constant reminder of what a cheater I was. I just can't look you in the eye every day, knowing what I did. But you could do it, if I had cheated on you while we were even. You could look me in the eye. I nodded, then come home, Jerry, because we are even. I did cheat on you. You were right. You just had the wrong information, but reached the correct conclusion on those nights when I was working late. Mike and I were having sex like a couple of sex-crazed rabbits. It started one night, just before we finished our shift. We bumped into each other, locked eyes, and there was this sexual spark between us. He just grabbed me, flipped me over, bent me over a packing crate, and took me. And I let him. I didn't say a word. I just let him take me. After that, almost every night we worked overtime. He'd catch me in a dark corner, or behind a pile of boxes and use me. I never said no. I never agreed. I just let him take me. It was fun sex, exciting sex, delightfully illicit sex, and I enjoyed it. I loved the sex, not Mike. It was just hot, forbidden sex. I didn't even kiss him. That kiss at the Christmas party was the first and only kiss we ever shared. I had a husband who loved me, and who I was crazy about, who made passionate, fantastic love to me. And then there was this part-time stud who treated me like a street wench and made me love him. And then I went and ruined everything. You ruined everything, she said. How you started acting a little strange, and I thought you suspected something. The overheard conversation was staged. It was meant to put your mind at ease and keep you from finding out that Mike and I messed up. Instead, it tore us apart. If I hadn't tried to be sneaky, we'd still be together. You would still be with me, thinking we were on equal footing. Are you saying you would still be sleeping with Mike? No, Jerry, she continued. That's the bitter irony. That fake conversation, which drove you away from me, also ended things between Mike and me. That night when we were working late, he brought those two guys he had the conversation with and told me that it had all been set up perfectly. And now the three of them were going to take me. That's when I left him. Since that night, all I've done is work and try to find you. I need you, Jerry. I'm not myself without you. Please, darling, can we leave the past behind and start over? We've been acting like fools. Can we please just start again? I stared at her, and my thoughts were racing 100 miles an hour. I loved her to death and missed her so much that not a day went by when I didn't think about her or want to be with her. But could I go through this again? She must have read my thoughts. It will never happen again, Jerry. I can promise you that these last 14 months have been pure hell. Jerry, the most miserable time of my life. Living without you is killing me, and I will never do anything that would make us go through this hell again. Please, Jerry, I'm begging you, come back to me. Whether it's at home or here, just let me be with you. In truth, there wasn't even a question of what to do. I had only run away from her because I felt unworthy. I loved her so much, and if she wanted me back, knowing everything about me, I'd be a fool to refuse. As for her infidelity, I had already come to terms with it when I started playing the stay-even game. Can we make it work? We have to. She loved me enough to lie to me, pretending to be an adulteress she never was. She never had an affair with Mike. She only told me that so I would believe we were even, and she would come back home. How do I know? I went back to my gym, and one morning, Mike walked in. I don't know why, but I stared at him for a long time. After a while, he came up to me and asked, "Do I know you?" "No, but you knew my wife well enough to have an affair with her." "Hey, what are you talking about, man? I've never had an affair with any married woman. Did you forget about the affair with Patty Bradley?" "Hell, no. That never happened. Why do you think I had an affair with Patty? She confessed it herself." I explained everything. He shook his head. "I would have loved to, but that Christmas kiss is all that ever happened. Not that I didn't try. The conversation you overheard was the truth. I don't know why she wants you to think I was her lover. All I can say is that I wanted to be, and I damn well tried to make it happen, but she never gave me a chance. Hell, I was shocked when I got that Christmas kiss. Will I ever tell Patty about my conversation with Mike? No, I'm not going to do anything that might upset the apple cart. She really did buy me that bass boat, and in some twisted way, I named the boat and wrote the name in big golden letters on both sides. Every time Patty and I get on board Mike's toy, it reminds us both of how fragile relationships can be and how much work it takes to keep them intact.